Hi Shannon, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to my listeners today.
Absolutely, Adele. I'm really looking forward to it.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Shannon, would you please tell our listeners how you came to be a business coach?
You know, it's a really interesting story. It was a long time in the making. I actually started working, believe it or not. My family is all entrepreneurs, and I actually started working when I was about 5 years old. My grandmother had a restaurant, and when we were kids, we would spend our afternoons and weekends standing on top of a milk crate, bussing tables and washing dishes. So I started out very young working, and by the time I was about 12, 13 years old, I started doing accounting and bookkeeping for, our various family businesses. It was a great experience for me. So when I got into high school, I actually started helping teach accounting in high school, and I had a wonderful teacher that mentored me, and she actually got me a job in a bank, which was huge for me because it exposed me to a whole different level of professionalism that nobody in my family had ever been exposed to, because everyone in my family had always been self-employed. So I started in banking really young when I was still in high school, and I started out as a teller, and I very quickly kind of worked up through the ranks, and I actually became the youngest officer that they'd ever had in the bank. And I started doing real estate and lending when they deregulated mortgage lending in the U.S. and started bringing it back into the banks. I was fortunate enough to be able to be in on that and help set that lending department up within the bank. So it was really exciting, and I got to learn a lot of new things. So I got exposure to the lending, and it was fun, but I felt like it wasn't really my calling, and I got to step into an operations manager position, and it was great because at the same time that I was doing that, I was getting my degree in management from the university. So I was working full-time and going to school full-time, and it was really a wonderful learning experience for me because I stepped into that position, and I'm in a small community. I got to manage and supervise the parents of the kids that I went to school with. And I grew up very fast. And I learned how to recognize personalities and behaviors and deal with conflict at a very young age. It was a wonderful, wonderful learning experience for me. And, it gave me a whole different perspective, and I got to do internal auditing and just got exposed to a lot of different things within the banking industry and the financial industry. I did that for a while, but one of the things that I realized is that I got bored really quickly. So I would take on jobs in the banking industry, and I would learn the job, and I would create a training manual and a system and a process for it, and then I'd bring somebody else in, and I train them in that position, and then I'd move on to the next position, which was wonderful exposure for me because when I got ready to have kids, I had experience in all the different areas within the bank. So knowing that I wanted a flexible schedule, and I can't believe how fortunate I was that this happened, but when I had my kids, I actually left working at a brick-and-mortar bank, and I was considering staying home with my kids, and the president of the bank came down and talked to me and asked me if I would be interested in being an on-call officer. So I got to look at the vacation schedules for all of the banks in the state, for all of the officers, and I got to pick and choose what days I wanted to work and what locations I wanted to work in and what positions I wanted to work in. And I did that for quite a while, and it was wonderful because I got to meet a lot of new people. I got to see new experiences, see how different people worked in different systems, different processes, new customers, and it was just a great exposure And I did that for a while, but, kind of that thing where I was ready for a new project. So I decided to settle back in locally. My kids were still young and still babies. And I decided to come back here locally and studied and became a financial advisor and did that for a while. So I did investments and really enjoyed doing that. But we were getting close to the bubble in the economy, and we had some changes in management and philosophy. And I just decided that they really didn't match mine. And I probably spent about a year weighing my decision, deciding if it was a good step or not. Decided, I really wanted to spend more time with my kids. And I had the accounting background and the management background, and I had a wonderful accountant that was a mentor for me from the time that I was, 12 years old, that had always wanted me to go into accounting. And I decided, well, maybe I'll just go out on my own, and I'll start my own little bookkeeping business. And so it was kind of a leap of faith. I had enough invested in the banking industry that I could have retired for as many years as that I had been in there. But I decided to go out on my own, and it was really scary. I had 6 weeks where the phone never rang at all. And all of a sudden, one day I was out of town taking some professional development testing, and in one day I had 9 phone calls for new clients.
Wow.
And it was a very exhilarating experience. And within a year of that, I had grown so much that my husband had came to work with me. So he had retired, I say retired, he wasn't that old, but he had left his corporate job and come and work for me. And within a few years, we had built a business up that I had a full-time staff, and I wasn't necessarily doing the day-to-day work anymore. I was very fortunate. I got to work on more projects. So I got to, at this point in time, it was where the economy had taken a downturn, and I would have CPAs and attorneys contact me to go into companies that had, that were, I guess you'd call it, in transition. So they were in trouble. They needed reconstruction on their records. So I got to go into companies and work with them to reconstruct their financial statements and come up with, work with the CPAs and the attorneys to come up with strategies to get out of the problems that they were in and help them recreate their operational functions. And I really enjoyed that, but I was working on the downturn side of it, so it was really stressful, working with people that were just barely holding on. And I liked it and I enjoyed the puzzle of it, but I realized that I was really invested in it. And it was, while I enjoyed what I did, I really wanted to focus on business owners that, instead of trying to pull things together, were situated in a spot where they were ready to take off and grow. And that is kind of how I came into coaching, realizing that I really enjoyed helping business owners focus on growth strategies versus minimizing losses.
Yeah.
It makes sense, the difference in that term. That's kind of how I came into coaching. It was really interesting how it came about because my husband and I, when we were getting our degrees, we were working full-time, and we would take night classes. So, we would work full-time. We'd take like 21 credit hours, and we'd get off work at 5 o'clock, and then we'd go to school until about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and then we would drive. We'd get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we'd drive 5 hours to the university, and we would take classes from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night on Saturday and Sunday, and then when we drive back, and we'd go to work full-time again, and, we had 5 hours conversation time both ways, and we'd always sit there and talk about the things that we wanted to do when we retired, because we recognized that we were always going to work. And so when we got done with our corporate jobs, we figured, when we were in our maybe early 50s, late 50s, we would want to work with business owners like our parents that, they were operating out of the receipts that were on their dashboard and on their car seat. And we wanted to do consulting with them and teach them how to be more organized so that they knew where their business was and they was at any given time and they could be more successful. And it's just ironic because that's what we ended up doing, but it was about 20 years ahead of us.
Wow. Fantastic. So, you had, plus 20 years in corporate life, and when you made that decision to step away from it, the phone didn't ring. How scary was that? What are some of the other challenges or fears you faced when you first stepped out, and then when you stepped out again to do something different to what you originally decided to do in self-employment?
Well, I have to say, the hardest challenge for me making that decision to walk away is that I have been with the company for over half my life. And it was a community bank. It was that type of atmosphere. It was still a corporation, but it was, a smaller organization in the banking world. But it was all I knew, and it was like family. That was my extended family. I had been there since I was a teenager. So it wasn't just walking away from a job. I felt like I was walking away from my support system, my family. And that probably was the hardest thing for me. I knew in my head that there was a difference in value structure, a difference in my personal value structure versus the corporation's value structure, but I still felt it was pulling on my heartstrings. That was the hardest thing. And to step away from that, it was stressful during that transition period where I had to make that decision. But once I did it and stepped away and cut the strings, I realized that wasn't my family. My family was always right there next to me, and they were always going to be there. And that was a very liberating moment when I realized that. Recognizing who your true support is. The corporation, it was secure, and I knew I had a paycheck coming, but they were not necessarily, I was still an employee to them. That makes sense? I'm still replaceable.
Yeah.
My family, I'm not. When I realized that, it was very liberating, extremely liberating. And the scary thing was when the phone didn't ring.
And there were no paychecks coming in.
No paychecks coming in, absolutely. And for me, I'm a very analytical type of a person. I'm not what you would think of as maybe an entrepreneur because I'm not an extrovert. I'm not outgoing. So sales to me are very intimidating. I'm extremely an introverted person. So the thought of having to go out there and knock on doors really, really scary for me. The way I got past that is I recognized that I had a really strong network. I had CPAs that I worked with, so I started going out and talking to the people that I was comfortable with first. That was the CPAs. The lenders. I had a huge community of lenders in the banks locally that I had great relationships with, and recognizing that they wanted to support me. It didn't matter if I was still in the bank or not. They weren't supporting the bank. Their relationships were with me. And they knew that I could help their clients when they came in. So recognizing where my support was, it wasn't with the corporation, it was actually with the individuals within the corporation. So I started working those networks that I had, and then I also got involved in networking groups like BNI that teach you how to build your business through referrals and how valuable those are. And that's where, I went 6 weeks without a phone call, and then all of a sudden I had 9 phone calls in one day, and it was because my network understood what my business was and the type of clients I was looking for, and they took care of me. They started sending referrals.
Brilliant.
So I built my one referral.
Do you have much, or did you have much competition in the work that you did at the time? And if you did, how did you differentiate yourself from others in the market?
You know, there was quite a bit of competition, and there still is. The way I differentiated myself is I really focused on the management aspect of it. So there's not a lot of the bookkeepers that are out there and accountants that are out there. They're very focused on tax accounting,
Yes.
which is, you know, it's fundamentally different than management accounting. My standpoint is that if you manage your business and you make an income and you're profitable, you have enough money to pay your taxes, right? And that's an aspect that I saw from the lending is when I was a lender, people would come in with their financial statements and their tax returns, and I couldn't loan them money because they were always operating at a loss, which tax accounting, you are trying to minimize your income, so you minimize your tax liability.
Yes.
So that was my focus, was teaching business owners that it's okay to make money and create your financial statements from a management standpoint, and then give those to your tax accountant and let them do what they need to do for tax planning. Your financial statements, first and foremost, are for you to manage your business weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, for the long term. And so that is how I really differentiated myself, and it took a while to teach people the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Being an accountant myself, I understand exactly what you're saying. What are some of the key lessons that you've learnt in being self-employed, being an entrepreneur in all these years that you've been out of the corporate world?
So owning my own business, and with the businesses that I work with, there's a lot of family-owned business, and I myself have a family-owned business. I think it's really important that you have the support of those around you, that you're you know, if you are a family-owned business, that you understand that business is business and personal is personal. And, you know, my husband and I worked together for 5 years, and we had a long-standing rule. We're in the same office. So we set the expectations up ahead of time. Only one person can be in a bad mood, because we're all human, right? Only one person can be in a bad mood a day, and you're only allowed 2 days a week. And I say that jokingly, but really, that is one of those conversations that you need to have, so that everyone understands what their duties are, what their expectations are, because you can't be in harmony if you're not transparent and don't understand what the expectations of you are and what other people's expectations are. So I think having that good communication with your family and your support. Honestly, working with businesses, make sure that when you start, that you surround yourself with experts. You are an expert in whatever field you have chosen to do. So for me, when I started my business, I was an expert in management financials and operational management. I was not an expert in tax accounting. So the first thing that I did is I made sure that I talked to my tax accountant to make sure I was setting up my entity correctly. And I made sure that I checked in with my legal perspective to make sure that I had my legal liability in line. So I started making those connections with the experts in the areas that I knew I did not have strength in. I knew that I wasn't a good sales person because it wasn't the environment that I learned in. So I contracted with a marketing company to do that development for me, to help me develop that message, because it wasn't my strong point. I could create the systems, and I understood it, but actually the branding and coming up with logos, since I'm not a creative person per se in that term, I recognize that, and I connect myself with people who are. So understanding where your weaknesses are and not focusing on them, bringing people in to fill out your team so that you can focus on the areas that your strengths lie in, because that's where you're going to be the most passionate about and focusing on your passions is going to allow your business to grow, because people get excited when you're excited.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. And to that point, do you have your own coaches and mentors that support you, notwithstanding the fact that you are a coach and mentor to other businesses?
Absolutely. I'm always a firm believer that I'm a firm believer in lifelong learning, and no one is ever perfect. There's always something new to learn. So I have had, and continue to have wonderful coaches and mentors. When I look for a coach or mentor, I think that everyone needs to have one or the other, or preferably both. I look for people, when I'm looking for a mentor, I generally go towards somebody that's in the field that I'm in and has the same philosophy, and I look for someone that's got a model similar to what I'm striving for. I'm looking for someone that's been there, done that, and can show me. I don't have to recreate the wheel, so they're going to show me the little shortcuts through it, and they're going to be a promoter for me and help move me along the path. When I look for my coach, I'm looking for someone that's going to help me and push me in areas that I'm comfortable in. The areas that if you focus on the areas that you're always comfortable in, you're going to get the same results that you always got. So in my coaches, when I'm looking for a coach and working with one, I'm looking for someone that's going to complement me in areas that I'm not necessarily comfortable in, but also talking a language that I can understand. So I absolutely have coaches and mentors, and will always continue to do so, because I think it's important to refresh my skill set and broaden my horizons all the time.
Absolutely. What do you think have been your greatest business successes as an entrepreneur to date?
The first one I have to say really is becoming an entrepreneur. Just taking that first step, that initial step is, I think for anyone, that's a success in and of itself. It's a scary prospect. So I think taking that first step is a success in my mind. The next is watching my business evolve. From being just a part-time bookkeeping business so that I can stay home with my kids, to turning into a management accounting firm, and then developing into coaching and consulting. I love the fact of looking back at where I started, how analytical and inflexible I was when I first got into business, to now where I am able to grow and take each new experience, and I think that's a big success. But probably the thing that I love the most, and I think it shows me that I'm being successful in what I have done, is working with my clients, having clients come in that are just, they want to grow. They have been working so hard to grow their business, and they're just exhausted. They're tired. Their families are tired, and they just want to give up. They're ready to just go out there and get a job and just give up on being an entrepreneur. And being able to work with them for 6 months to a year, and seeing them just blossom and grow, and now they're in a business that really is the same business they had before, but they're thriving, they're growing, they're profitable again. Their families, they're being able to spend time with their families, and now they're looking at it as a future, how that they're able to see themselves still in their company, and the company's growing, 20 years down the line, but they still have time to sit with their family. I think that's the greatest joy of being an entrepreneur. And I think a true measure of how successful you are is that your company's making money, right? And you don't have to be there all the time. You have time to spend with your family and in your community doing things you're passionate about. I think that's the measure of truly successful company, is that you have a thriving, profitable business, and you have time and money left over to invest in the things that you're passionate about that maybe are not financially driven.
Totally agree. So, if you were to give some advice to a person contemplating setting up a small business, what 3 key points would you mention to them to support them on their journey?
The first one would be don't be afraid of failure. I think that sometimes we're so scared that we're not going to be successful that we want to make sure that we analyze everything. At least I do. I know that I have been guilty of that myself. I want to make sure that I make the best decision possible, and I don't want to make any mistakes. So I'm going to make sure that everything's perfect. And when we do that, and I know that I'm guilty of it myself, we go into that analysis paralysis. We just never accomplish anything. So I think that my own learning is that failure is a very valuable tool. We learn a lot from that. And if we make a mistake, that's okay, as long as you learn something from it and can grow off of it and be willing to take the next steps. I don't think that we should be afraid of failure. And then building off of that, we talked about the analysis paralysis. I think of that, the flip side of that is having great ideas and always chasing the next greatest thing. So making sure that you do have that element of focus. So take a look at what your big picture goal is and understand what that is and work backward and create your steps how you're going to get there. So when you have that big idea, make sure that you create implementation and action steps into your business plan so that you always have, even if they're small ones, you always have some forward momentum to your business. And you have a plan of action. You may have to go back and revise it, but at least you're making forward momentum in that. And then I think probably the final thing is make sure that you talk about what your goals are. I think that sometimes we get stuck in our head, and so we're not verbally putting it out there for other people to understand what our goals are. So whether it's with your employees that you have, or if you're a business owner, on your own, verbalize it with your family or your coach. Somebody put it out there, because when you put it out there and you verbalize it and you write it down, now there's an accountability piece. You're holding yourself accountable because you've written it down, you've put it out there. You have your support, your network out there that's supporting you, can hold you accountable too when you're checking in with them, talking about them. And your employees, if you have a big plan and you're working towards an end goal, the only way you can make sure that everybody's on the same page is if you're talking about it and you're putting it down on paper. So making sure that you have a goal, you have it written and verbalized, and everybody is on the same page about that goal, and then building your implementation plan, making sure that you have a strong foundation in place to work towards it.
Brilliant, thank you. So, to that point, what are your own business goals for the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
3 to 5 years. Well, I will continue to do the coaching and consulting. I love working with business owners, and I like helping to see them be more successful. My long-term goals are to continue to work doing training for entrepreneurs, but I will also be working on developing coaching and group coaching, a platform for women business owners. I think that, when I look back on my growing experience myself as an entrepreneur, I grew up in a very male-dominated industry, and I learned a lot through that, but I also learned watching other women and women business owners. There's a lot of uncertainty there. They have great experience, and they tend to invest a lot in their education because they want to make sure that they're the experts when they go out there. But a lot of times I see some self-doubt. Self-confidence is not as high as it should be or could be. And so they're uncertain when they're asking for, making sure that they're asking for what they're worth. It's okay. Money's not necessarily a dirty word. It's okay to ask to be paid what you're worth. So my long-term goals are to work on focusing on women business owners, teaching them to be okay putting a dollar number on their skill set. That's a great thing. A lot of times we as women business owners go into business to, it's more of a hobby for us because we're passionate about something. A lot of times it has to do with, giving back to our communities in some way, shape, or form. But the reality of it is that with the economy the way it is, especially in my local economy, a lot of the women have gone back to the workforce, and they're the sole support for their families. And so we need to be okay asking, our customers for our true value, or if we're professional women, asking for wages for what we're worth. And if we do that, we're actually more successful and able to give back to our communities. So with that whole premise, doing more training on that, but really the ultimate goal is helping women be more successful. And when they're successful, my goal is to create a foundation where my successful women clients will start developing program training for young women, middle school, high school, college level women that are getting ready to go out into the workforce, whether it's to get a job or start their own business, and build confidence in themselves as women and understanding what their worth is. So those are my long-term goals. So obviously, it's, kind of goes in that tagline is to make money at a difference. That if we are successful ourselves as business owners, then our families are more successful. Our kids are more successful as we go through school. And if we're successful, we're building a strong business, which then in turn makes our communities more successful. That's the message that everyone needs to hear.
Very exciting. At some point offline, I'll share with you some experience I had in New Zealand with older, successful women giving back to the younger community, the school girls community, and it was called Future Leaders, a program, a community-based program. It was very, very successful, and it might support you in what you're doing in your big vision for your foundation. So I'll make a note to talk to you about that one of these days.
Oh, I would love that.
It's still going, so you could perhaps connect in and get more knowledge. So but we'll talk about that separately. So do you think you're living your dream life right now? Living the dream, as they say?
Absolutely. I think I am. I have a schedule that's flexible to be there for my family when I need to be. Just run kids here and there. I get to work with business owners, and I get to provide training, and I love doing that. And I also get to travel. I just can't think of anything better besides doing more of those things. So I think that, like I said, this is what I planned on doing when I was retiring. I got to do it 20 years ahead of schedule. So I'm very happy.
Fantastic.
To be a coach and been an entrepreneur.
So when you're 101 sitting in your rocking chair, just as I plan to be, What do you think will, when you're reflecting on your life, will give you the greatest reason to smile about the life that's gone before you?
I think the most for me is knowing that somewhere I made a difference in someone's life. And, obviously first and foremost, I want to know that, I made a positive impact on my family. But, also knowing that I helped other people be successful. In my mind, it's not successful isn't determined just by a monetary measure. It means that they are living the life of their dreams. Somehow I was able to help someone live the life of their dreams. And by doing that, they were able to make a difference for someone else.
Fantastic. And as I say, if you've managed to achieve that, what a way to go. You'll go with a smile on your face.
Absolutely.
That's my view too.
Yep.
Shannon, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, me and my listeners. It's been truly inspirational, and it's just lovely hearing about someone who had such a significant corporate background, but had a hankering as well to do something different, and you did. You were brave enough to do that, and it sounds like you have been hugely successful at it, and there's still more to come. So I look forward to sharing more with you and hearing your story as it continues over the coming years.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and thanks for letting me share my story.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.